And actually the funny part is we as brewers have to study markets not based on consumers but based on tax structures to see if those are viable markets for us.
People forget about consistency when they are making craft beer. For me, craft is where there's human intervention, there is good quality product and still maintaining consistency.
Today we are still behind compared to the US, but we are catching up really, really fast and want to get up in the morning the next day to continue go to work. And that's when I was like, forget all of this, I'm gonna go start a brewery. And now it is that. And in the US, it was the exact opposite. We used to wake up in the morning and be like, oh man, when is it going to be Saturday? And who wouldn't want to be sitting next to tanks of beer all the time, right?
Yeah, and that's another thing, right?
Namaste everyone and welcome back to another fresh episode of 3XP Podcast. This is me Kunal Raj, CEO, founder of KRF Media, and we have an exciting conversation lined up in this episode. We had the founders of Latambarcem Brewers, Ishan and Anish, the mastermind behind this iconic beer brand Maka and this beverage, non-alcoholic beverage Borecha Fizz. On this part of the episode, we talked a lot about the Indian and the USA startup cultures, about the booming economy of beer industry in Goa, about the hurdles, about the challenges like the tax structure, about how maintaining consistency and much more. The episode was quite a long one, so we as usual divided the episode into two parts and you are listening to the first part. And before going, subscribe. And when I say subscribe, the subscribe button glows. That's the YouTube new feature. So pay homage, whatever you say, pay homage to that feature and subscribe. And yes, enjoy. Every time I say Ishan, I have that craving to say Avasti, you know.
Avasti? Oh, yeah.
That is a bit, but before the podcast, as I was telling, don't mind if I, end up.
All good. Do your thing.
And I was going through that census of 2022 where it mentioned like the percentage of millionaires in India is 1%.
Right.
And as compared to US, which was like around 39.
Correct.
That was in 2022.
Correct.
That is the latest what I could get. What do you think is the percentage now in terms of the global scale, India versus US, and coming 2 years?
See, so I think today we are still behind compared to the US, but we are catching up really, really fast, right? Because I think finally India has reached that stage as an economic powerhouse where we have the ability. I think the main thing is credit, right? Today, businesses are created based on credit. And back in the day, getting credit in India was very difficult. Credit or even like venture funding or any sort of funding, right? And now that has become extremely easy. And because of that, we are seeing a shift. Now everybody is becoming an entrepreneur, which is awesome, right? Because today entrepreneurs lead to becoming millionaires, right? So doing a job doesn't lead you to becoming a millionaire. So today, or it can, but it might take longer, right? So I believe that because of this shift, today we're going to see a rapid growth in more millionaires being created in India every day. And I think we're going to catch up over the coming years.
What do you think like the percentage would be? Just a guess so that I can check after, maybe Google after 1 year and check.
Percentage is going to be a very tough number to guess. I mean,
it's very difficult to estimate such a number.
I mean, I'm sure people have. I mean, if you're saying today it's 2%, like let's say like maybe 5%, and you can't quote me on that because I have no clue, to be very honest with you.
We'll have to do our research for that.
Like say now, an average Indian, what does he dream of? Like maybe a degree,
Right,
a good degree. Okay, I didn't say engineering, नहीं तो engineering वाले आके बोलेंगे कि मुझे क्यों तोड़ा. Okay, and maybe now as a trend, maybe freelancing and then get a job, US booming market, right? And you all were already doing well in US and then you all started here.
Right.
So my obvious question, what I had craving is why? Like Q.
So I think both me and Anish will have different answers for this. So I guess I'll start and then Anish
you can
give
start.
yours. Well, see, I believe all of that is, and some people may disagree, but I believe that it is a little overrated because, getting a degree and then getting a job and following that path, it's actually after a point becomes just very mundane. Like, you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. You're basically doing what the world is asking you to do, which is you're following this path which is designed and you're just following it. And after a point, especially me when I was living my corporate life, which is supposedly considered the dream where you're just, making good money, you're going up the ranks in your company. But after a point, it gets so boring because there's no creativity. There's no path which can change, right? You're just following this preset thing. And I was like, I'm sick of this. I want to do something that showcases me as a person and I'm able to, really express what I like, and want to get up in the morning the next day to continue go to work. And that's when I was like, forget all of this, I'm gonna go start a brewery. And now it is that, like, now I wake up in the morning, I want to go to work. It's not that I have to, which is what it used to be. So I think that was my reason, to be very honest with you.
As you mentioned, like even though you have to travel like 1 hour, you still have that
Yeah.
excitement to let's travel 1 hour and go.
Absolutely. Like not once do I think like, oh my God, I have to do this today morning. I wake up and I'm thrilled. And in the US, it was the exact opposite. I used to wake up in the morning and be like, oh man, when is it going to be Saturday?
Yeah.
Like, I just do not want
You're
to get up.
basically living for the weekends over there.
Yeah.
Over here, you're living for every day. And also another reason, big reason, was seeing the growth opportunity that is available in the country, right? That sort of opportunity is 1 in a million. Not 1 in a million. Again, don't quote me on the number. It's a phrase. But the opportunity is much lower in the US compared to in India. So today, I would definitely recommend everyone to come back if they have an opportunity to start something of their own.
Yeah. There's so many gaps today, right? Markets abroad, especially the more developed markets, everything has been done, right? So now you trying to find an opportunity is much more difficult. Whereas India is now just opened up and there's just so many gaps that's just waiting to be filled. And the next 5 years, all of those gaps are going to be filled, to be honest with you, right? So whoever's fastest is going to succeed, essentially.
A writer quoted you as bros in booze or something.
Which writer is this?
There was some news article that come out with what was it?
How do you know this? I don't know.
I
about
read
this.
somewhere.
Our writer, a very bright, talented writer, if you're saying that, he found it from somewhere and then he added the quote over there. Maybe some news article or somewhere.
Bros in booze or bros in brews or something like that.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, you were saying like why you moved out from.
We actually, there was a moment, like there was quite a bit of time where we didn't want to come back, right? Because we were very happy with the lifestyle that we had over there. I mean, everything is picture perfect, right, from the outside over there. But then when you deep dive into the psychology of the people working over there and their lifestyle, it's actually very sad, to be honest. And over here, we've created something, our own life, that is much more exciting than what we would have had over there. Right? And that's the reason why now we would encourage other people also to come back.
And who wouldn't want to be sitting next to tanks of beer all the time, right?
Yeah, and that's another thing, right? You're making beer. Like, what else do you want?
In US and India, as you compare, I heard you in one of your interviews said like it is like 20 years apart in the market.
Right.
And this was like 2 years, 3 years back, what you had said. What is the status now? Like,
See, you can't quantify it exactly, but we do run a little bit behind. But now you see the gaps actually closing in. Like if you look like even like 5-6 years ago, when a new technology came out, it took India 2-3 years to get that same technology over here, right? Well, technology, food, different items. Now it's completely closed in the gap, right? So when a new iPhone comes out, it launches the same time in India and as it does in the US. So now you have started seeing the difference, right? Even cars, everything. Today they are launching side by side in India and US. So you see that gap closing in extremely fast. And we've seen that already happen with big companies and big brands and technology. Now we're going to start seeing that with product offerings also, which other startup brands are doing, right? Like today, if you go to a shelf of a supermarket, and I'm referring more to supermarkets is because that's the sort of the industry we are in. And so I really like to study that area a lot when I go to different countries. You'll see a lot more variety of each category of products when you go to any country across, even developing nations like Thailand, Indonesia. So they're like a couple steps ahead of us in terms of the innovation happening in the startup space and in the early stage brand stage, right? But that in India is just starting out. So, we will start seeing that difference. Brands have already started doing that, but where the opportunity is lacking is in the supply chain. So the supply chain in India has not caught up to the speed which other countries have, which is distribution and retail, which also now slowly we are seeing happen. But that is one area which I think a little bit work more is required, and I think in the coming years we will see that gap also fill in very, very quickly.
What is a major hurdle like now in that technology transfer?
The only thing is that the infrastructure, that is what is lacking in our industry. right? For us, all our product is transported through roads, right? And that's one major change that we need to make our supply chain much more efficient.
Yeah, the time that goes, from transporting goods and even outlets, right? Like today, distribution channels and retail is the infrastructure of that is very, very nascent today, which is now slowly changing. As international chains like 7-Eleven and all of that is coming into India. They are, I think, like making a shift in how retail is being looked at. And even like today, homegrown Indian companies like Blinkit and Swiggy, Instamart are completely changing the landscape in which consumption is happening of retail products, right? So that is a positive shift that we are.
India has the best tech now, right? Like today, starting from like Google Pay to all your hyper-local e-commerce channels, retail, yes, in India, retail is still very prominent. Other countries, retail is also subsiding, right? And we see that shift in India as well. So tech is going to take over the whole supply chain model, and I think it's going to make it much more efficient in the coming years.
Yeah. And the crazy part is, even though we might be behind in physical retail, we're actually the most ahead in terms of quick commerce. Today, there's no other country I've been to where you can get your groceries delivered to you in 8 minutes. That's insane. Yeah. Right? And people who visit, my friends who visit from abroad, they're like, what the hell? I've never seen this happen before. Like, what? So it is crazy.
But it should have been there, right? Because they are like really specific about time, and there are people who want the things in
correct, yeah,
quicker, right?
But that technology, it still doesn't exist. That's the beauty. So in the tech side, I think we have overtaken a lot of countries and are going to keep that going, essentially, right?
So coming back to beer again, there in US or some other countries, like it is in their diet, like you'll find beers in their fridge daily. You get up, you drink beer, and then you go to work, right? In India, it is a bit, culture and then some rules and this and that. But why did you think of venturing in this particular
in the beer space?
Yeah, in the beer space.
Actually, it was just kind of chance, right? Like, so when I was in the US, I used to make my own beer just out of a hobby, out of passion, like I used to buy these kits and then like as a hobby over the weekend, me and my friends used to make beer, which was not for the purpose of actually drinking that beer, because the thing is we ended up drinking more beer than what we made that day. But it was just fun, right? You take out your creativity in it and this like that. So that's how the idea came. And then that's when we studied sort of the market to see how the opportunity is. And we saw that nobody was doing anything creative, right? Everyone was following a certain process which was set in stone. No one was doing anything out of the box, focusing on the manufacturing ingredients. And that's what we wanted to do, right? That's when we decided that, come on, let's do this. It's a great opportunity. And then he figured out how to make actual beer, and then so he can tell you.
People were there, right? The craft beer segment had just started booming when we got into the industry, right? Bangalore, a lot of micro breweries had opened up. Maybe I think at that time Goan also, I think the policy had just started, right? But there was, in the bottle segment, there was a huge gap, right? Bira had just started, White Owl had just started. I think there was White Rhino and Simba. These 4 companies were there. So there was a boom, but there was still a huge gap, right? And that's the gap that we wanted to fill, right? And we wanted to do it in our own way. Other companies were doing it the way they like doing it, and we thought that they're also missing on some aspect, because most of these brands that had launched at that time had like 1 or 2 beers on the shelf, right? Craft beer brands. And for us, craft was not 1 or 2 beers, not 1 or 2 styles of beers, right? For us, it was like you should have a handful of styles. Today, there has to be like, if you go to a microbrewery, it should be like, at least there should be 1 beer that you like, right? Or everyone likes, right? Not, I mean, it can be different beers for everyone, but that was where our brands originated, right? Maka is me. So we started with 5 different styles of beer. We were the first brand to start 5 different styles of beer, and all in a bottle, right? There was no other brand like ours that had the capability, I would say, to do 5 different styles of beer. So the whole point was that, a consumer can choose, right? Today, it should not be forced down their throat that, no, these are the 2 styles. You have to either drink this or either drink this, because this is the best price that we are giving you, right? Today, we went above that. We created a market segment that never existed. We went in a price point that never existed in the market, right? And
especially for domestic,
right? And we've created consumerism that was never there. and people liked our beers. And the whole point was that we give good quality, true to kind beers with imported ingredients to showcase what we can do and what we bring from outside. So we studied in the US, and the whole point was seeing what they're doing over there, getting it back to our country. And I think we've done a pretty good job doing that when we launched the different styles of beer. And everyone didn't like all our styles, but everyone liked at least one of the 5.
And that was the idea. There's at least one beer that fits your personality, your taste profile, your style, right? And that was the whole goal behind it.
And that's how Maka came along, right? The beer that you like is a reflection of yourself.
Yeah, because who are used to that regular beer, you're like, अरे beer जैसा नहीं लग रहा है, तो because they are used to the regular taste, whatever.
Yes. So we also have a rice lager that we just launched, right? And that was to showcase what we can do on the regular beer side, what regular is for the consumers over here, right? But we've gotten an excellent response on that beer as well. It's a very light summery beer, and it's at the price point that people anyone can afford, I would say. So we have a beer for everyone. That's the whole point about the brand.
सबके लिए beer है, बस आ जाओ. You mentioned at the start, when we were explaining craft beer, what exactly is the craft?
I believe that craft is like a little lost out there, the word craft. According to me, what craft means is that there is some sort of human connection to the product, right? Not everything is done by machines, or not everything is done by the mindset that we have to be in budget, right? Manufacturers are making products that they have to be in budget and lowering down the quality of the product, and still calling it craft, which I don't believe is true. Right. For me, craft is where there's human intervention, there is good quality product, and there is still maintaining consistency, right? People forget about consistency when they are making craft beer. They say that, because it is craft and humans are making it, first time it is good, the second time, it went a little off. It doesn't work that way.
Human error.
Right. It doesn't work that way. The whole skill of craft comes that you can make the same thing again and again. Now today, let's take something, what is craft, right?
Handcrafted but consistent.
Take it, the street food that you eat. You go to your cutlet pav place, right? You know that the favorite cutlet pav that you're going to, your favorite cutlet pav in the market, you're going to get the same cutlet pav every time you go, right? So it is with beer also. Right? If you're making craft beer, yes, over there also the cutlet pav is not made by machines. It's made by a human being, right? And he is being able to make the same thing again and again. So why can't you make beer the same thing again and again and make it good, right?
So basically, that's the best analogy, right? When you look at commercial versus craft, it's like McDonald's versus your local cutlet pav person, right? They both are good. They both need to be consistent. Just that one is completely mechanized and through a process, and the other has the touch and the handcraft aspect to it, essentially.
And I went to culinary school, right, when I was back in the US. And for us, the first thing that we learned was consistency, right, without lowering down quality. And that is what we strive in our brewery as well. Today, all the recipes that are designed are for consumer acceptability. They're designed for consistency. They're designed for scalability. And that's how we that's how we got all the recipes out there.
Recipe thing, like it's a secret, right? You'll keep the recipe secret, only just...
It's a secret, and it keeps changing as well. As our raw materials change, we have to adapt to the raw materials to get the same consistency, right? Today, you're going to buy vegetables from the market. They're not going to be always the same, right? You buy fruits. One day it's sweet, one day it's not sweet, right? So you have to adjust how you're going to use the malts and the hops and the malts and the hops and the water, right? These are the three things that consistently change in when you're manufacturing beer. So you have to adjust the recipe every time, and that's where the craft skill comes.
And when you're using natural ingredients are never consistent, right? They will keep changing based on that year's weather patterns and XYZ things, right? So hops keep changing, malts keep changing. So we as a brewery need to adapt to that, and that's what the brewmasters and the production team
so
have to
like
manage.
you can't be like, because it's craft, my malt changed, because of which my beer today is tasting different, right? We have to, as craft, it is our skill to adapt to the raw material and make the next batch consistent with the first batch, Right, so you have to play around with your ingredients, you have to play around with production methods and stuff like that, and still get the same beer out there.
And to be honest, the recipe is not as important as the process, right?
And the mindset. Right, today I run the brewery, I run the production of the brewery like a chef, right? Because I want consistency and I want quality, right? So that mindset is what I think is required in the craft industry.
There you mentioned like your ingredients are imported. So doesn't it like change or increase the cost for the Indian market?
That is why our products are priced much higher in the market, right? And today, unfortunately, hops don't grow in India, right? And malt, also the higher quality malt, you get it out from Europe or mainly from Europe, right? Now there are other markets as well, like Australia and New Zealand, that are doing, even Russia maybe, right? That have a lot of malts. But again, everything is imported and it's taxed much higher to get it here. So it is a struggle, yes, definitely. It does increase the cost of the product for the consumers. But then again, there is a distinguishable taste difference when you manufacture with imported ingredients to Indian ingredients.
And it's not to say that, imported ingredients are necessarily better. It's just what is right for that purpose, right? Like our goal is not to be like, we're using imported ingredients. It's about where does it come best from in the world, right? So like spices, whatever we use, all come from India because the spices are best in India, right? So it's about that, right? Today, wherever you can source the best possible ingredient around the world, you get it from there. So our oranges come from Valencia in Spain. Our lemons come from Sicily in Italy. Our malts come from Europe.
But our honey ale comes from Jim Corbett National Park, which is the best honey I've ever tried, to be honest.
Yeah. So it all depends. It's not about being imported. It's about being where is the best source.
Where the best comes from. Okay. We were talking about the tax values and all before this break. Okay. I used to think that it is 28%, like, but you mentioned it is like 150%. Can you just explain so that we know how much you have been charged? Yeah, and we'll complain to the
So what happens in India? So most things have become centrally controlled now since GST has come, right? So taxation is unified for most products except for petroleum and alcohol
and tobacco.
So those are still controlled by the state excise, right? Which means that each state has the right to decide its own tax structures for alcohol.
That state.
So the particular state. So each state some states are more conservative, some states are more liberal when it comes to alcohol taxation. And so it really depends state by state. So for example, Goa is taxed at a much lower bracket and it's per liter, right? So it's like around 50 rupees a liter for beer and then 22% VAT, which is one of the lower tax structures for alcohol. And then now you go to a market like Delhi or even Karnataka or Maharashtra where the taxation is the highest, where it can range from 150% to even 180% for the excise duty. And then additional VAT, which can range from 25 to 50% on top of that. So it really depends. And actually the funny part is we as brewers have to study markets not based on consumers, but based on tax structures to see if those are viable markets for us, to be honest. Yeah.
So on your priority, on your planning sheet, tax let's focus where
before entering any market, you have to study the tax structure. You cannot enter any market in the beer industry.
The tax structure, the cost of the licenses, all of those play a very, very vital role in determining the viability of each market.
So now since we are in that topic already, right, on a product-based industry, ours is like a video production team, KRF Media, where it is more of a service-based industry, like where we are doing. I'm really keen to know how the product industry works. So basically, like if I were to launch a product-based industry and want it to be like successful at least from the 3rd or the 6th month of its launch.
Right.
I didn't say first day because then it will like by सिर्फ प्रोडक्ट लॉन्च ही करना था तो सक्सेस हो जाता लाइक सो व्हाट इज लाइक
द strategy, right? So I mean you have to have multiple things figured out, right? First is product, right? You need to figure out what product you need to make.
First is the setup. First is the setup. How are you going to make the product?
No, but first you need to know what product. So once you know the product, then the manufacturing. Do you want to make it yourself or do you want to get it made somewhere, right? Then once you have the product, then the supply chain, which is who will sell your product, right? Distributors, which is the middle of the supply chain, and then retail, which is the end of your supply chain. So when it comes to a physical, tangible product, there's multiple channels that need to be figured out, from product, manufacturing, supply chain, to the final end retail, right? So it's
to marketing.
Yeah, and then finally marketing and brand awareness. product-based companies need to have like 4 to 5 departments operating in unison to be able to successfully execute on something like this.
So we have like our teams are like basically we have a separate R&D team, we have a separate quality control team, we have a separate product administration, which is your finance. Then you have your sales team separate, marketing is separate, everything. Like literally you have to target every segment, and you have to have a team for every segment to be successful in each area to have the best brand awareness.
And then if it's a food product, then compliances also play a very important role, right? Today, product
safety, food safety.
product compliances change on a daily basis. From what you're putting in it to what you're writing on the labels, keep changing on a day-to-day basis, right? So there's a compliance team that also layers on legal and compliance team, which is also. So you're talking about 7 to 8 verticals working side by side to be able to successfully execute on something like this.
So like whatever you put it on the label and whether it is there on the actual product, how it is made sure, like the external team, how often they...
You mean the nutrition facts?
Yeah.
So nutrition facts, you have to send it to testing labs. So like there's certified labs where you have to send your product for testing on a regular basis to make sure that the calorie count, to the fats, the sugars, all of them are measured correctly and showcased on the label.
And there are audits that take place, right, for every manufacturing unit. So the FDA takes audits, the different, I mean, yeah. So
Yeah,
main
but
is
that
the
would
FDA
be
when
like
it goes.
once a year or so, no?
Once a year, we have to renew our license every year. So they come and do an audit every time, right? So to see that you're compliant in every
Sometimes
way.
even the vendors expect an audit from you, right? They also,
Yeah,
people who are
vendors.
selling our product also want to make sure that you're compliant. So they'll come and do audits.
Yeah,
on
so
your
our
facility.
clients come and do our audits, basically. So we have to pass their audits, we have to pass everyone's audits, basically. So that way, so you have to, so the whole thing is that, you know, to grow fast, you have to be compliant, right? And that's what we focused on, making sure that, you know, we are compliant in our production standards and our manufacturing standards from the beginning, that our growth rate is going to be much faster. Because you're going to start, if you start trying to tackle those issues later, it's just going to decrease your market. Right, people are not going to buy a product till these compliances are taken care of, and it'll lower down your growth rate.
So basically you are giving exams your entire year. You know?
Pretty much.
Every day is a new
New exam.
exam.